April 11th, 1962. This is only the second game in Houston Major League history. The uniforms are still new. The franchise is still new. The whole thing still feels a little bit unreal. Like somebody had an idea, too big for the room, and somehow pulled it off anyway. And on the mound tonight is Hal Woodeshick, not the loudest name on the roster, not the first big star in club history, not the opening day starter. Just a left-handed pitcher being asked to do something very simple and very difficult. Take all that opening night excitement and make it feel real again. Because anybody can have one big night. A brand new team can ride emotion for one game. What matters is the next day. Can you do it again? Can you win a different way? Can you hold a lead? Can you look organized? Can you look like you belong? The night before, Houston beat the Cubs 11-2 in the first Major League game ever played in Texas. Tonight is not that. Tonight is tight. Tonight is small. Tonight is tense. Tonight is a 2-0 baseball game where every base runner feels dangerous and every out felt earned. And that's why this night matters. Because before Houston had stars, before Houston had history, before Houston even had the name Astros, it had to learn how to protect a lead. And on the second night this franchise ever existed, Hal Woodeshick was the man who did it. Welcome to the Astros 100. I'm documenting one game per player until I reach 100. Today, Astros01, Hal Woodeshick, April 11th, 1962. Cubs, Colt 45s. Houston wins 2-0. Today's idea? Before Houston had history, it had to learn how to protect a lead. This is not the biggest game in franchise history. It's not the flashiest. It's not the most famous. But it is the kind of game that tells you what a team might one day become. Because on that first night, Houston announced itself. On the second night, it steadied itself. And that is different. An expansion team is supposed to be sloppy. An expansion team is supposed to be a curiosity, a temporary attraction, little entertaining, little chaotic, probably not very serious. But on this night, Houston wins with pitching, defense, and one timely hit. That is the kind of win that says this thing might actually hold together. Houston's brand new. This is the inaugural season of the Colt 45s, one of two National League expansion teams in 1962, along with the New York Mets. So this is not just the beginning of a season. This is the beginning of a franchise, a city entering the major leagues, and the National League stretching itself into something larger than it used to be. The mission for Houston is simple: look legitimate as quickly as possible. Not perfect, not dominant, just legitimate. Play clean enough, compete hard enough, win enough games that people stop thinking of you as a gimmick and start thinking of you as a baseball team. Chicago is in a different kind of uncertainty. The Cubs are not new, but they are unstable. They're in the middle of one of the strangest experiments in baseball history, the College of Coaches era. So instead of the clean authority of one classic field manager, the Cubs are operating inside a structure that has always felt a little bit too clever for its own good. And right away, that contrast is interesting. Houston's the brand new team trying to look organized. Chicago is the old team trying to function through an idea that never really felt natural. The night before, Houston won 11-2. So coming into this one, the Colts are 1-0, and the Cubs are already trying to stop the series from getting away from them. This is one of those weeks where baseball feels like it's remaking itself in public. Houston just played the first ever Major League game in Texas. Dodger Stadium just opened in Los Angeles, and the Mets are beginning their own existence as a brand new National League team. The schedule's bigger now. The league is bigger now. The footprint of baseball is changing in real time. So the mood around the sport is not just baseball's back. It's more like baseball's spreading. Baseball's experimenting. Baseball's modernizing. Baseball's trying to decide what the next version of itself is going to look like. And Houston's right in the middle of that. Only the Dodgers are opening a palace, while Houston does this in Colt Stadium. So one franchise is opening with grandeur, and the other is opening with nerve. And honestly, there is something a little bit beautiful about that. Because one of the great themes in baseball history is that the sport always tells you it belongs to the biggest names, the biggest parks, the richest myths, and then some temporary place with a hot sky and a brand new club shows up and starts making its own claim. Houston's manager is Harry Kraft. Kraft is a baseball lifer, a former outfielder, a man trusted to bring structure to a situation that could very easily drift into chaos. That is what an expansion team needs. Not a philosopher, not a showman, not a revolutionary, a stabilizer. A man who can make the room feel organized before the room has earned that feeling. Across from him is Chicago's El Tappe, and El Tappe is tied directly to this Cubs' weird moment in history. The College of Coaches experiment that has always felt to me like the kind of idea baseball people invent when they no longer trust the basic shape of their own game. Maybe there was some light to it on paper, maybe in a boardroom. Sounded modern, I don't know. But baseball is not a boardroom game. It's a game of rhythm, hierarchy, habit, and trust. When the structure starts feeling unusual, players usually notice it before executives do. On the mound for Houston, Hal Woodeshick, a left-hander, a journeyman, a man who's already moved around, already had to fight first place, already lived the sort of Major League Baseball life where nothing's guaranteed and everything feels temporary until it isn't. He's not entering this game like a crowned ace. He's entering this game like a man being handed responsibility. For Chicago, Glenn Hobby, a solid right-hander, capable, dependable, the kind of pitcher a team leans on because it knows roughly what it's getting. And that is the little hidden cruelty of this game. Hobby actually pitches well enough to win. He throws a complete game. He gives up only 2 runs. He still loses because sometimes baseball punishes you for 1 inning and wastes the rest of your night. Okay, this is one of the best parts of the whole setup because Houston is this brand new baby, this newborn franchise. But the Hall of Fame glamour is mostly in the Cubs lineup. Lou Brock, Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, Ron Santo. That's serious historical weight. That is real baseball royalty, or future baseball royalty, standing in the other dugout. What makes that outcome feel even more fun, because the expansion team is supposed to be the one blinking first. Instead, Houston shuts out that lineup, not because Houston has the bigger names, because Houston plays the cleaner game. And that's one of the oldest truths in baseball. The famous team does not always control the night. Sometimes the famous team supplies the nerves, the names. The other team supplies the discipline, and the discipline wins. There's also a broader matchup that I really like here. The Cubs represent old National League permanence, while Houston represents the future roadmap of baseball. Old authority versus new geography. Old games versus new ground. And for one night, the new ground wins. Now, there isn't much clean, preserved, back and forth talk here, and I'm not going to fake any, but there is something better than that. Fake tension. There is structural tension. Harry Kraft had ties to the Cubs organization before coming to Houston. So one of the first men ever asked to define baseball in Houston is facing the organization he had just recently left behind. That matters because this is not just a game between one team and other. It's also a little bit of a game between one baseball worldview and another. As for rivalry, there really isn't one yet. At first pitch, the all-time series between these clubs, 1 game old. Houston leads 1-0. And that's it. That's the entire history. That's kind of perfect. Because when you think about it, you really get down to it, every great rivalry, every lopsided historical number, every deeply familiar opponent starts as nothing, starts as 2 uniforms seeing each other for only the second time. And one of the fun things about doing a franchise series like this one is remembering that even the oldest baseball relationships were once newborn. And yes, technically, this is not an Astros game. It is a Colts 45s game. I know. But that kind of thing matters. Names matter. Branding matters. Origin stories matter. The Houston Astros do not begin as the Houston Astros. They begin as something rougher, stranger, more regional, more provisional. That is not trivia. That is texture. Hal Woodeshick is exactly the kind of player a new franchise needs, even if it does not realize it yet. He's a clean, linear success story. He is not a clean, linear success story. He's not one of those players whose career begins with everyone nodding and saying, yes, obviously this man was destined for greatness. No, he was a grinder, a left-hander who has moved around, a player who's had to survive organizations, changes, uncertainty, and the basic instability of professional baseball life. That kind of player develops a certain usefulness, not glamour, usefulness. And usefulness is gold for an expansion team, because expansion teams are built from men who need opportunity, men who need one more chance, men who may not be central to anyone else's future, but can become central to yours. Woodeshick had already lived enough baseball life by 1962 to understand pressure without dramatizing it. And I think that matters here. The franchise is brand new. The environment is brand new. The city is new to Major League Baseball. But Woodeshick himself, he's not new to uncertainty. He steps into a situation that might overwhelm a different kind of pitcher. He treats it like work. And sometimes that's exactly what a young team needs from an older baseball soul. The beautiful part of that is his best Houston season is still ahead of him. This is not some late career cameo from a man already finished. This is the beginning of one of the most genuinely valuable arms, becoming exactly that for the franchise. So Astros01 is not just a founding night story. It's a prelude. For Woodeshick, this game meant credibility. That's the word I'm going to keep coming back to, credibility. He's handed the second game in club history and responds by throwing 8 scoreless innings against the Chicago lineup with real power in it. That's not decoration, that's trust rewarded. It also gives him a very specific place in franchise history. The first Houston shutout. That belongs to Hal Woodeshick and Turk Farrell. Firsts matter, even the quieter ones. Everyone remembers the obvious milestones. The first game, the first win, first home run. But I'm interested in the first signs of character, and this feels like one. This is the first sign that Houston might not just be dramatic. The first sign it might also be sturdy, and Woodeshick is at the center of that. This game says he can carry tension. He can survive traffic. He can help turn noise into structure. That's meaningful, especially for a pitcher whose whole career taught him not to expect anything permanent. All right, let's dig into the box score. The game starts with danger. Top of the first, Ken Hubbs singles. Billy Williams strikes out. Ernie Banks singles. Just like that, the Cubs have men in the corners, 1 out. And this is exactly how anxiety enters a ballpark. You can feel it right away. The brand new home team has all the good feelings from opening day. But now the game has asked an actual question. What happens when something goes wrong? And Woodeshick answers it. George Altman grounds out. The inning is managed. No run scores. Houston breathes. Then comes the bottom of the first. Bob Aspromonte's retired. Al Spangler singles. Rowan Mejia strikes out. So now there are 2 outs, but there's still life. Spangler steals second. And that's a great little early franchise detail, by the way. Aggression, activity, motion. Norm Larker walks. Jim Pendleton walks. Bases loaded. And then Hal Smith singles to left. 2-run score. Spangler comes home. Larker comes home. Houston leads 2-0. And that's the ball game's only scoring. If you love baseball as much as I do, you know that's pretty funny, because there are games where it takes forever for the important swing to arrive. There are games where the important swing shows up in the first inning and then just sits there, untouched, for the next 8 innings. This is one of those. From there, the game becomes a long exercise in escape. Pardon me. Chicago keeps getting men on. Houston keeps making that not matter. 3rd inning, traffic. 5th inning, traffic. 6th inning, traffic. Over and over again. The thing that saves Houston is the double play. Not once, not twice, 4 times. 4 double plays turned by Houston in a 2-0 ball game. That's not just helpful defense. That's spiritual warfare, Because if you're the Cubs, every time you begin to build a little pressure, suddenly 2 outs happen at once, and the inning just falls through the floor. By the middle innings, you could feel the game leaning towards something psychological. Chicago's not being overwhelmed. Chicago's being denied. That's a different feeling. Glenn Hobby deserves mention here too, because after that first inning, he's very good. He settles in. He keeps Houston from adding on. He goes the whole distance. So from Chicago's side, this must be a little maddening. Your starter gave you a complete game. The other team only scores twice. You get men on all night, and you still can't crack it. If I told you before the game that the game would end with Chicago having 9 hits and 4 walks and score 0 runs, you might assume I misread the box score, or maybe baseball had briefly become an abstract art form. But no, that's just how the sport likes to behave when it senses weakness. It turns arithmetic into a prank. Woodeshick gets through 8 scoreless innings. Not a tidy 8, not a breezy 8, a laboring, skillful, resilient 8. And that distinction matters, because dominant pitching is easy to admire. What admire maybe even more is a pitcher who keeps stepping into little messes and keeps getting out of them. Then comes the 9th, and now it gets serious. George Allman walks, Ron Santo singles, 2 men on, nobody out. This is the game at its most fragile. Harry Kraft goes to Turk Farrell, and that move matters for 2 reasons. One, because Farrell's one of the defining pitchers of early Houston baseball, and 2, because this is part of how a franchise starts learning its own shape. Who finishes the game? Who gets trusted? Who becomes a presence when things tighten up? Farrell comes in. Ground ball turns into another double play. And that's Houston's language tonight. Erase, erase, erase. Well, there's still a little more danger, still a little more noise, but then the last out arrives, Houston wins, 2-0. The night after winning 11-2, the Colts win a completely different kind of ball game. And that might be the most important thing of all. For Houston, this meant the opener was not a fluke. And that's huge. Anybody can make a dramatic entrance. Brand new club can ride adrenaline for one game and trick everybody, including itself. But then the next day comes, and the real question appears. Can you do something less glamorous? Can you pitch? Can you defend? Can you survive pressure? Can you hold a small lead and not panic? Houston answers yes. And when an expansion team proves it can win ugly, or at least win close, that's when it begins to feel real. For Chicago, this has to feel worse than the opener in some ways. Losing 11-2 is ugly, true, but simple. Losing 2-0 after your starter throws a complete game and your offense puts men on all night, and that one lingers. That one follows you back to the hotel. That's the kind of loss where every individual failure feels tiny, but the total result feels enormous. Because the Cubs are already living inside a somewhat awkward organizational experiment. Losses like this do not just feel like baseball losses. They feel like evidence. Evidence that something is off. Well, there's no clean surviving press conference transcript here that I can trust enough to present as actual dialogue, so I'm not going to manufacture one, but the shape of the room is still easy to imagine. Harry Kraft would have liked the steadiness of it. He would have liked the fact that his club did not need another avalanche of offense to win. He would have liked the pitching. I think he would have liked the double plays. He would have liked the fact that the game looked under control. And even when it probably did not feel that way from pitch to pitch, Woodeshick's side of it is probably pretty simple too. Pitchers like him usually do not narrate their heroics like poets. They talk about getting outs, trusting the fence, trying to stay ahead, trying not to make the big mistake. And on Chicago's side, the room is probably irritated more than devastated. Because what do you even say after a game like that? We had chances. That's true. We did not cash them in. Also true. Our starter pitched well enough. That's true again, but we still lost. And that's baseball's meanest category, a post-game quote. The one where everyone can describe the problem, but nobody can fix the feeling of it. Afterwards, Houston keeps the series rolling and completes the sweep the next day. So suddenly, this brand new franchise is not just alive, it's 3-0. Now the season does not stay magical. Of course, this is still an expansion team after all. Reality still arrives. The losses still come. The depth gets tested. By the end of 1962, Houston has done something respectable. The Colt 45s finish ahead of the Cubs and ahead of the Mets. And that matters. It means the inaugural season is not just a novelty campaign. It means the club established the baseline of competence. Chicago, meanwhile, slides into the kind of season this opening series hinted at. The Cubs finished badly. And that's what makes early series like this interesting in retrospect. At the time, it just looked like April. Later, it looked like prophecy. Houston's rough, but real. Chicago's older, but shakier than could be. And this little two-game opening picture turns out not to be misleading at all. Woodeshick's best Houston work is still ahead of him, and that's one of the reasons I like him at Astros01. He's not just a relic at the beginning. He's part of the foundation. He grows into a major role for this young club. He becomes an all-star. He has an excellent Houston run. He turns into one of the first truly important arms in franchise history. So this game works both the origin story and preview. You're watching a man earn the right to matter more. And after baseball, Woodeshick remains tied to Houston. That always lands with me because some players pass through a city. Others become attached to it. When you're talking about the first years of a franchise, that attachment means something. It means the team was not just a stop. It was a home, or at least a part of one. So Hal Woodeshick's story after this game is not simply that he had better seasons. It's that he became one of the early people who helped baseball in Houston feel inhabited, not just launched, inhabited. 9 hits and 4 walks and no runs. And I know this from the Cubs' perspective, and this is a Houston Astros series. And there are 100 elegant baseball reasons for no runs on 9 hits and 4 walks. I know sequence matters, timing matters, double plays are part skill, part circumstance. Yeah, I know all of that. I still hate it for the Cubs. I hate the helplessness of it. If I were on the Cubs bench that night, I would have been furious at the repetition of it. Another chance, another ground ball, another inning dead. Some games do not feel like the other team beat you. They feel like you kept walking into the same locked door. Next time, Astros02, Turk Farrell, June 3rd, 1963, against the Giants. If Hal Woodeshick helps establish that Houston can protect a lead, Turk Farrell is where the early franchise starts to feel like it might actually have a pitching identity. So this episode is the first structural beam. The next one starts showing you the architecture. That is Astros01, Hal Woodeshick, April 11th, 1962. 8 scoreless innings in the second game of Houston Major League history. Hal Smith gives the team its only scoring with a 2-run single in the first. Turk Farrell closes it. Houston turns 4 double plays. The Cubs get men on night, all night, never score. What I love most about this game is how unglamorous it is, because that is how some franchise really begin. Not with a legend, with a function. Not with a masterpiece, with a clean, nervous, necessary win. The night before, Houston had announced itself. On this night, Houston proved it could hold itself together. And for a team that had existed for only 2 days, that may have mattered even more. I'm documenting 1 game per player until I reach 100. And this one belongs to Hal Woodeshick.